I am General of the Army Ulysses S. Grant, and I should like to reflect with you about John Alexander Logan. In my opinion, the most successful political general in the late war. And John Logan is an interesting man, to say the least. First, he was born on February 9th of 1826 in Jackson County, Illinois, and that is in the southern tip of Illinois, an arrow area between the Ohio and the Mississippi rivers, and it's called Egypt. It's long been called Egypt, and it has something to do, stories say, that with biblical relationship, that they had good crops, and the people in the northern upstate part of Illinois did not. They had to go to southern Illinois, just as in the Bible, and it became known as Egypt, the upper part known as Canaan. I don't know if that's true or not, but it's a good story, even if it isn't. But Jack Logan, as he was called as a child, is the son of Dr. John Logan, who was the son of a doctor, an Irish immigrant. John came to America with his family when he was 5 years old. He lived in 4 different states before they finally got to Illinois. It's the 5th state of residence. And Dr. Logan was a very successful farmer, and he also raised thoroughbred horses. He loved horses and made a lot of money with them and racing them. John, or Jack as he was called, when he was born on February the 9th of 1826, was the first of 10 children, and a very sharp, bright lad. Small. I identify with him in that we were both small children. John grew to be 5 feet 7 inches tall and very solidly built, so he's more heavily built than I am at 5 feet 8 inches and 152 or 3 pounds. He is 5'7" and solidly built, but he was a small child. And he grew up in the home with Dr. Logan, who highly valued education. John is fortunate in that he had about 12 years altogether of education, private tutoring at home, then schools in the local towns around where they lived. Went to the Shiloh Academy nearby, and had private tutors. So Jack Logan, growing up, had a really good education and was a very sharp young man. But a couple of things about General Logan that most people don't know. He plays a fiddle. In fact, he's quite a good fiddle player. And he likes to tell the story that when he was a teenager, he happened on one particular day to climb up on a fence and play his fiddle, and a neighbor lady, apparently disgusted with him, yelled at him and said, "John Logan, what do you expect to be?" And he said, I laughed and told her, "Tra-la-la, I intend to be a congressman for the United States," which he did become a congressman. He was also a jockey. As I said, his father liked to raise horses, and he loved to ride them, and John was a very successful jockey. And he smiles and likes to say that his favorite horse was Walnut Cracker. And Walnut Cracker was fleet of foot and a winner. John won a lot of money for his father. He raced horses in several states for Dr. Logan. He, in 1846, enlisted in the Mexican, the army to fight in the Mexican War. Was named a second lieutenant in his company there from Jackson County. And he expected to get into the fight. He didn't. Their unit was sent to Santa Fe, New Mexico for garrison duty. Now, John was appointed the quartermaster, and they marched, as he says, 10 or 11 days across some very arid areas, and there was a really serious problem with water, dehydration, but they made it and were there for the duration of the war. General Logan saw no action as Lieutenant Logan in the Mexican War. Came back to Egypt, southern Illinois, and his father wanted him to be a doctor as he was. John had said that being a doctor held no charms for him, but he was interested in the law. He began reading law with his uncle, Alexander Jenkins, who was also living in the area, and decided, as did his uncle, that he needed more, that the law was becoming more complex, more civilization. He needed a better, more formal education. So he went to the University of Louisville in Louisville, Kentucky, and was there for a couple of years and graduated in 1851. He came back to Egypt and began a very successful law practice. And he was elected to the Illinois Assembly as a state assemblyman, a state representative, and served about 3 terms there. But I would like to, at this point, give you a description of him at that time. This is in the New York Times when he was a congressman just a little later on. And the New York Times said of him, "He is very Indian in his appearance. Mr. Logan has blue-black hair, profuse, glossy, and of a thick fiber. Regular features and white teeth, shown to good advantage by brown skin, and a form of head singularly high and long from brow to base, though not quite broad enough to be in good proportion. His voice is a strong, clear tenor, its fault being the western one of monotonous vigor." That reminds me of the first newspaper article that described me as being portly. But that was a description of him as he appeared to the New York Times and to his friends and the congressmen at that time. But when he got into the Illinois State House, he is well known for having introduced and gotten passed the non-immigration law for Negroes, free Negroes, an act to prohibit immigration or settling by free Negroes in the state of Illinois. And it said that no free Negroes could immigrate into the state. And if it was found they were there, they would be fined $50 per day until they were removed from the state. And this was strongly supported by the area he represented, Egypt, southern Illinois, and by most of the other state because it passed by a 2-to-1 majority. Even though the 1850 census said there were 5,436 free blacks in the entire state of Illinois, but 3,124 of those free blacks were in the area of Egypt, and which is bordered by Missouri and Kentucky, Tennessee, in that scoop surrounding the southern part of Illinois. But it caused some rancor in the people in the upstate, the northern part of Illinois. But it passed by 2-to-1, an act to prohibit free Negroes from immigrating or settling in the state of Illinois. He did 3 terms in the State House, did a couple in consecutive terms, laid out a term and went back in 1857. And in the interim, between the first 2 terms and the 3rd term, he was elected the prosecutor for the 3rd District of Illinois. And this pleased him no end because it encompassed 16 counties in Egypt, southern Illinois, and most of the 9th Congressional District. And he did indeed have his eyes set on higher goals. But he was there for about 3 years. He married in 1855 to Mary Cunningham. They had 3 children. The first one, John, died before his first year. The daughter and the other son, Elizabeth, they called her Lizzie, and Manning, the second son, 3rd child, they both lived and are doing alive and well here in 1868. the year which we are reflecting. But when he left the job of county prosecutor for the 3rd District, it's interesting in 1857 because his last case involved the convicting of a horse thief. I think the man, he said, had stole several horses. And Logan was the prosecutor. Logan convicted him, secured a conviction. But the judge wasn't happy with it and urged the convicted to appeal it. And he did appeal it. By the time he appealed it, Logan was no longer the county prosecutor. He hired Logan to be his attorney. Logan took the case and won. He got the man off. So that is something I do not think happens frequently in legal circles. The same lawyer gets a conviction for a crime and then turns about and gets the man, the perpetrator, the convicted, off free. But Logan did it. So I think that would indicate to anyone what kind of an attorney that John Logan was, a very effective one. But as he is in his political career in the Illinois State House, and then wanted to run for Congress and running for Congress, he became a profound Douglas Democrat. He was also a fiery, as he is described, orator. And I have seen the man animated. So I would imagine he makes a bell ringer of a speech. But he was such a fiery orator and such a strong Douglas man that Stephen Douglas began to invite him to appear with him on the stump. And he frequently spoke at events with Senator Douglas and was highly thought of. When he got into Congress in 1858, he was a strong supporter of the Compromise of 1850, a strong supporter of the Fugitive Slave Law and its enforcement thereof. Of Douglas, he loathed abolitionists, and also fire-eating Southerners who were advocating for secession. But he could not abide an abolitionist, and he supported slavery. Now, when he had an opportunity in Congress, in fact, one of his first, if not his first speech, he said to this effect about the Fugitive Slave Law enforcement. He said this on the floor of Congress. In 1858, every fugitive slave that has been arrested in Illinois or in any of the western states, and I call Illinois a western state, for I am ashamed longer to call it a northern state, has been made by Democrats. In Illinois, the Democrats have all that work to do. You call it the dirty work of the people. We are willing to perform the dirty work. I do not consider it disgraceful to perform dirty or not dirty, which is in accordance with the laws of the land and the Constitution of our country. Now, he was such a popular speaker that this was said in October the 14th of 1858 by the Mound City, Illinois Emporium, the newspaper The Emporium. And Mound City is very close to Cairo, which loomed largely in both my and his careers with Belmont and jumping off to go to Donaldson and Shiloh and so forth. So Mound City said this about him in October of 1858 when he was in Congress. Logan is a popular speaker and seems to espouse, certainly so far as this district is concerned, the popular cause. In addition to this, he is personally popular, is in possession of the desirable faculty of making himself a lion in the social circle, as he is acknowledged to be in the political arena. In him, abolitionism finds a foe, who will be satisfied only with war to the knife and knife to the hilt. His hate for that creed is bitter, and no man knows how to evince a bitter spirit more completely than John A. Logan. So he was strongly in support of the Compromise of 1850 Fugitive Slave Act, keeping free Negroes out of Illinois, but he also intensely disliked secessionists. He felt the Union should stay together and that war would not come. And he got that after that speech about doing the dirty work. He got the nickname Dirty Work Logan, which he still hears from time to time in Congress after the "We'll do the dirty work" speech. So Dirty Work Logan is a nickname along with Blackjack Logan. And he got Blackjack, as the description I related to you shows. He had a lion's mane of long, thick black hair that he always wore long, as did his father, and a heavy mustache, and he had black eyes. And when he became angry, it was uncomfortable to be around him. His countenance was fearsome to look upon, as his staff and men will relate. But he was felt to be pro-South. He wanted the Union to stay together. He really didn't think that war would come. He did not think, he felt strongly that slavery would not migrate into the western part of the country, those states that are carved out of the Louisiana Purchase and the Mexican conquest. He felt strongly that slavery would not get that far, and that we could keep the country together if we could keep the secessionists from becoming loud enough to have an impact, and from the abolitionists doing the same thing from the North. So he was struggling, and he wanted the country to stay together. In fact, he said on the floor of Congress after there had been some states to secede, this statement: "They are not our enemies, with whom we should be willing to measure swords, but part of our people. They are our kinsmen, and should be dealt with kindly. Their return from their wanderings may be looked for at some future day. If our action shall be tempered with forbearance and moderation, but if you let slip the dogs of war, never, never." And this was made shortly before the firing on Fort Sumter. And when Fort Sumter was fired upon, he realized that war was going to come. He was still in Congress, and on that fateful day in July of 1861, he and some other congressmen had gone out to see, with the other people picnicking, to see the battle. And he became disgusted with what he saw. They were with a Michigan regiment. He picked up a musket that had been thrown down and began fighting with that Michigan regiment and a New York regiment. So he picked up a musket on that first battle and became personally involved. And he spent the next several days bringing wounded and dead from the battlefield back into Washington City. He then went to President Lincoln and asked for an appointment as a colonel for a volunteer regiment, and Lincoln was not enthusiastic about that, but not so much because he was seeking political favors or wire pulling. But Lincoln told him, "You are such an eloquent speaker for our cause. Will you not stay in the Congress? I can use you to far better advantage if you will stay in Congress." But Congressman Logan declined that, and sought and got an appointment to an Illinois regiment, I believe the 31st Illinois, and became their colonel. And we became acquainted on June the 19th of 61, when I saw him in the town of Springfield. I was walking through the town with a friend, and I met John McClernand, whom I had seen before, and he had this individual with him who was Congressman Logan. And my friend suggested that they speak to my regiment because their 90 days had run out, and indeed half of the men that I had mustered in back in May were already gone. And I was very concerned that I was going to be a colonel with no regiment. And Logan and McClernand eagerly accepted. I was concerned because Logan had remained silent since the firing on Sumter. He'd not come out pro-Union and anti-secessionist. And I was greatly concerned that he was going to use this occasion to make a policy statement supporting the South. Many of the people in his area in Egypt, in fact, went over and formed, I believe, the 15th Tennessee Regiment for the Confederacy. One of his wife's brothers enlisted in the Confederate Army. So I was very concerned, but it turned out that he made a stem winder. He spoke for, I guess, 2 hours, and by the time he got through, those men would have enlisted to follow the devil himself through the gates of hell. That was a moving speech that even I enjoyed. So he came out on June the 19th in getting my regiment, the 21st Illinois, to re-enlist for 3 years in federal service. And I was glad that he had to say what he said to my troops. Then later, in my next reflection, the second part of thinking about and talking about General Logan, political general, I'll talk about his service in the late war and how he presented himself. He was, I think, the most successful, most capable political appointee of any of those some 187, I think, the president appointed. So, for the moment, I have said quite enough. I hope that you have enjoyed this and will join me for the reflection part 2. General John Blackjack Logan, successful political general. For the moment, I bid you an affectionate farewell.